Once upon a time, deep in the heart of an enchanted forest, nestled between towering oak trees and sparkling streams, there was a quaint little cottage. It was a cozy abode with a thatched roof and walls so thick and sturdy they could withstand the fiercest storms. But it was not merely its structure that made this cottage unique. No, it was what lay within its warm embrace that truly set it apart. For this was no ordinary dwelling. This was the home of a family of bears. Yes, a family of bears who lived in a cottage in the middle of the forest. Now, you may be thinking, how peculiar is that? Well, I thought so too. But in this fantastical tale, where magic danced hand in hand with nature, anything was possible. One day, while the bears were out foraging for berries in the sun-dappled glades, a young woman named Goldilocks wandered into their territory. She was a curious soul, this Goldilocks, with hair like spun gold and eyes that sparkled with mischief. As she skipped through the undergrowth, humming a merry tune, she stumbled upon the very same cottage that had been occupied by the absent bears. Now, you might be wondering why Goldilocks didn't simply walk past the cottage. After all, wouldn't it have been easier just to let sleeping bears lie? Well, my inquisitive friends, that's the thing about Goldilocks. She was blessed, or perhaps burdened, depending on your point of view, with an insatiable curiosity. And the sight of that quaint cottage with its welcoming chimney and tidy garden was just too much for her to resist. So she did what any reasonable person would do. She opened the door and walked in. The interior of the cottage was a delightful mess of bear-sized furniture and half-finished honeypots. But what caught Goldilocks's eye immediately were 3 bowls of porridge steaming merrily on the table. Oh, how her stomach rumbled at the sight, for she had been skipping merrily all morning and hadn't yet had her fill. Now, we've all been there. You stumble upon a table laden with delicious food, and your better judgment goes right out the window. But Goldilocks took things a step further. Instead of merely helping herself to a bowl of porridge, she embarked on a tasting expedition. First, she sampled the porridge in the smallest bowl. Ah, it was too hot enough to scorch her tongue and send her reeling back in her chair. Then she turned to the largest bowl. Oh dear, that one was freezing cold, so cold that tiny ice crystals formed on her upper lip. And now you're probably thinking, common sense, Goldilocks, just choose the middle bowl, right? Well, sometimes common sense takes the day off, and Goldilocks was having none of it. She chose the second smallest bowl. It was a beautiful autumn morning and Goldilocks felt a peckish, but not too peckish. The second smallest bowl was just perfect. With a satisfied sigh, Goldilocks finished every last drop of porridge, not realizing that she was being watched the entire time by a pair of very unhappy bears. And then she saw them. They stood in the doorway, their fur bristling, their eyes narrowed. The largest of the 3 was a burly grizzly, his face creased with concern. Next to him was a slightly smaller brown bear, equally displeased. And finally, there was a petite black bear whose face crumpled into a mask of despair. "Who are you?" boomed the grizzly, his voice echoing with authority. "And what have you done with our porridge?" Goldilocks, ever quick-witted, recovered quickly from her surprise. "Your porridge, my dears," she said sweetly, "it was just too small for me. I needed something a bit more substantial." The brown bear scoffed, "Substantial indeed. You've eaten every last spoonful, haven't you?" Goldilocks nodded innocently. "Oh, I'm terribly sorry," she exclaimed, placing her hands over her ears. "But you see, I couldn't resist. It smelled so divine. And besides, I worked up quite an appetite skipping through your lovely forest." The black bear, who had been sniffling quietly, suddenly burst into tears. "My porridge, my precious porridge," she wailed. "It was my favorite recipe, passed down from generations of our bear family." The grizzly bear placed a comforting paw on his wife's shoulder. There, my love," he said soothingly. "We still have 2 full bowls of porridge in our cave. We shall share those between us." He turned back to Goldilocks, his expression stern. "But you, young lady, must pay for what you have done." Now, you might be thinking the bears planned to devour Goldilocks right then and there. And while that certainly seemed like a real possibility, they were actually much more reasonable than that. "We want you to sleep in our beds," said the brown bear, "so that you can experience the comfort that you so rudely deprived yourself of earlier." Goldilocks, bless her curious soul, didn't catch the sarcasm. "Oh, how splendid," she chirped, thinking only of a cozy nap. "Which bed would you recommend, my dears?" The bears exchanged weary glances. This human was either incredibly dense or playing them for fools. Either way, they decided to play along. The grizzly bear gestured to the largest bed. Try that one first, he suggested with a hint of malice. Goldilocks, ever eager, bounced onto the bed. Oh my, it was as hard as a rock. Her backside flattened against the unforgiving surface, and she shot back down onto the floor as if he'd been launched by a catapult. That one's too firm, she declared, dusting herself off. Perhaps I should try the next one then. The brown bear merely grunted in response, nodding towards the smallest bed in the corner. Goldilocks clambered onto the next bed, only to sink into a slushy, gooey mess. Oh dear, she cried. This one's too soft. Is there no middle ground in this house? The bears stifled their laughter. At this point, they were beyond angry. They were exasperated. The black bear, who had stopped crying, spoke up. You may sleep in my bed, the middle bed. It is not too hard, not too soft, just right. Goldilocks beamed. Oh, thank you. That's most kind of you. And without another word, she climbed into the black bear's bed, snuggled under the covers, and promptly fell fast asleep. The bears stared at her for a long moment, their earlier anger forgotten. Finally, the grizzly bear shook his head with a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Well, that's that, he said. Good night, everyone, and with that, they left the cottage, each retreating to their own den for a long winter's nap. When Goldilocks awoke, the cottage was silent. For a moment, she lay there, luxuriating in the softness of the bed. Then she sat up and realized she was in serious trouble. The bears might be gentle, but they were definitely not in the habit of sharing their beds with trespassers. Just then, the sound of heavy footsteps approached her bed. Goldilocks jumped out and turned to face her advancing doom. Standing before her was the burly grizzly bear, his eyes narrowed. So, he rumbled, you're awake. Goldilocks, summoning all her courage, managed a shaky smile. Good morning, she said brightly. What a lovely bed you have here. So comfortable, not too hard, not too soft, just right. The grizzly bear blinked. Was this human mocking him? Did you say something about my bed? He asked gruffly. Oh yes, said Goldilocks, realizing that she was treading on very thin ice. I meant to tell you before, but I was fast asleep. Your bed is just right. Not too hard, not too soft, just right. The grizzly bear seemed mollified by this assessment. Perhaps he had a thing for compliments. He grunted, turning to leave. Very well, good day. And just like that, Goldilocks survived her encounter with the grizzly. She tiptoed past him and out the door, practically running for the hills. As she skipped away, she couldn't help but hum a jaunty tune. She had outsmarted the bears, and what's more, she had discovered the true meaning of hospitality. From that day forward, whenever Goldilocks found herself wandering through the enchanted forest, she always made sure to steer clear of the bear's cottage. She had learned her lesson about not going a-bedding in other people's houses, even if they were bears. And the bears, well, they continued to live in their cozy cottage, sharing their porridge and their beds with anyone who stumbled upon their home, except for Goldilocks, of course. Their beds were just too hard, not too soft, just right.